Shooter ended up getting a 2-month break in between his last 2 rides. Stick around if you want to see what happened on ride number 10. All right, welcome back to ride 10 on Bonnys Six Shooter. Now, before I get into what happened and why he got a 2-month break in between ride 9 and 10, I want to point out how he's got a hind leg cocked as he's letting me prepare him to get on. So I've done my groundwork. I did my homework with my groundwork. I made sure he was really accepting of what was going on. The last ride that I had on him was July 24th of 2022, and this ride is taking place September 19th of 2022, so nearly 2 months off in between ride 9 and 10. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go through everything all over again like it's a first ride. Make sure that I cover all my bases, do all the things that he's very familiar with. I'm not just going to get on him and throw him to the wolves and expect him to behave himself. I'm going to go through the list of all the things that I did in my first 9 rides, and especially in my first ride. That's going to keep me the safest and help me to be able to spot any sort of, indiscrepancy, a spot where he's not accepting of what's going on, where he says, hey, I don't remember you doing that before. Can you please explain that to me a little bit better? And if we go really slow like this, we're going to be able to spot those places on our colts, and it's hopefully going to help prevent a wreck somewhere down the road, okay? I know all this stuff is really boring and it seems really trivial, and you're welcome to fast forward through all of this, skip ahead, but if you really want to do right by your horse and do a really good job starting your colt, you have to get really comfortable and good at doing the boring things really, really well. That's what makes or breaks them. Doing your homework and doing this work at this level and putting these, as a friend of mine puts it, she says, you put these small deposits in your bank account. And then when you have to make a big withdrawal from that bank account of that horse's emotional and mental well-being, you've put the deposits in there that when you ask for something from them, they're going to be mentally and emotionally stable enough to give it to you. If this guy cannot stand perfectly still for me to get on from a lick tub in the round pen after he's had 2 months off and, he's been on full feed. I didn't change anything about his feeding program. He's just been standing there with a friend. If he can't do this, he's sure not going to be able to do it for me when it matters, when I got to get on him and make a run. I might show up to a rodeo late. There was an accident on the interstate. Get there late. Need to saddle him and get on him and go make a run that I paid a bunch of money for. I need to make sure that I've done my homework at this very most basic stage of the training process. And, I think the results that I've had speak for themselves with all the colts that I've started from doing this from day one. I've been working them like this, now for, good 10 years almost, just like this. And I think I got a good reputation of making stuff that wants to get along, stays quiet, and is good for the basics for most anybody. So I know it's boring, but we just do it over and over and over again. But don't get complacent when you do it over and over and over again. Stay vigilant. Pay attention to the signs that they're telling you. Sometimes we can get so bored with it that we just go through the motions. And we don't notice when they might stick their head up in the air a little bit and they hollow out their back. We need to pay attention to stuff like that. But there is a point where you're doing this and you know what it feels like when it's right and you know what it feels like when it's wrong. And your instincts are going to kick in when you know that it's wrong and it doesn't feel right, and you're going to be able to spot it. And that's all part of it. And once I get up there I go ahead and bend his head both directions and make sure he's soft in the face and he's going to give his head a run, because if we can't get him to bend his head at this most fundamental level, he's sure as heck not going to give his face when he's going at any sort of speed. I don't have a real good excuse why he got to take 2 months off. He didn't get hurt or anything. I just got really busy. I had 4 horses that were all preparing to go to horse sales within 2 weeks of each other. And I had so many videos and so many rides I needed to put in, and hauling them and editing and posting those videos and answering client questions, that I just ran out of time. And at the end of the day, I still needed somebody to video me on him. And when I was using people to video me on those other horses, I couldn't keep asking somebody to video me. In a perfect world, I'd have my own cameraman all the time at my disposal, but I don't. So if you notice on my timeline, there was a stretch there where it was all sale horse videos, just behind the scenes and riding out and riding with distractions and riding in the arena, and every single video you could possibly imagine, confirmation videos, you name it. I was doing those kind of videos on those other horses. And if you're interested in seeing what something with a little more finish on it looks like, I encourage you to go back and take a look at those videos, even though those horses have found new homes all over the country. So he's being really good here so far. Just really, really basic, bending his head around, walking off in the new direction, making sure that he remembers our emergency stop here. We always go back to the emergency stop and make sure that we can down-regulate this horse, get him quiet again in the event he does get worked up, because, let's face it, he's not going to learn anything if he's worked up. He's going to learn it when he's relaxed and his head is low and he's calm and quiet. So we're always working towards that feel on any horse, and especially this one. So he feels confident here to speed up a little bit, and I'm going to go ahead and let him. Where's he going to go? We're in the round pen here, and we're going to work on these emergency stops at a little bit more speed. And he's coming down softly for me, changing directions good, walking off, wanting to nod and bob his head. He's not getting sulky on me, because as we've seen before in some of his videos, he gets a little sulky in here. Being in these tight quarters, they just don't want to move out as well when they go outside. So I'm going to work these bending exercises at the trot before I move up into a lope, and keep on working at it, just doing the same thing over and over again. Again, make those small deposits that are going to be there when we need to make a big withdrawal somewhere down the line. Practicing these maneuvers are just as much for me as they are for him. I'm relearning my timing with this horse. I've been riding all those other horses pretty darn consistently, and their gaits, their movements, their speed are all so entirely different than Shooter's that, I'm probably a step behind Shooter. He's pretty quick. His feet move quite a bit faster than those other horses. So this is just as much for me as it is for him, and getting my timing back and my feel back for him, and kind of developing our relationship again. Now, one of the other reasons why I had to take that break like I did from riding him was because JD and I both got COVID in August, and we were down. It was pretty bad. We didn't have the respiratory issues, but we did have the headaches and the body pain, and we were touch and go for about a week, and then when we did try to go back to work, we could only tackle one project a day before we were kind of wiped out and had to recover. And this time of year is a tough time of year for us to be sick, and so, you kind of only do the things that are an absolute priority. And I lost quite a bit of my balance and my strength in the saddle being sick. And so when I went back to riding those colts that I was prepping for sale, and the geldings that I was riding, man, it was tough to get going again. And, not ride so poorly that it created a problem with how they rode. it was a struggle. And so getting my equilibrium back, getting my balance back, getting my strength back, it took a while. And so this first ride back on Shooter, like I said, is just for as much for me as it was for him. And, sometimes we have to do this, you guys. Sometimes we have to go back to basics. And like if you've had an accident or you've had a surgery maybe, or, maybe you had something emotionally happen to you, and we need to go back and kind of go back to basics and start over again and make sure we still remember and have that muscle memory and all those basics still work. And we're confident there because we don't want to go in there and try to do something crazy and do some crazy maneuvers or do something stupid. And like all of a sudden, a friend invites us to go for a trail ride and we haven't been on our horse in several months and they've been on full feed and that suddenly seems like a good idea. Well, no, maybe it's not a good idea. Maybe we need to go back to the round pen and work on our basics before we're ready to go to the next level. And in this case, he wanted to get a little speedy there. You saw that, and all I did was bend him back and forth on the rail there, and that kind of put a stop to that. That extinguished that right away. So if we have those tools available, we can use them whenever we need to. So I'm working rollerways here with him. All I'm doing is I'm starting the maneuver like I'm going to do an emergency stop, but I'm doing it away from the lead that he's on. So if he's on left lead, I'm going to roll away to the right. And then we'll take right lead, and then we'll roll away to the left. And what's happening is because we've been working those emergency stops, that completely stops forward motion. And now, this is where I talk about the timing. My timing has to get better because when I put him into this roll away, my release isn't correct and he's coming to a complete stop on that forehand on me. And so, I'm kind of cussing myself thinking, I know my feel is off and my release point is off because he needs to come through with that front end rather than just freeze up on that front end. And part of that freezing up on the front end and stopping like that is because of, just going from this one particular game to the next. And the first game was emergency stop. The next game is roll away. And after we work on smoothing him through and getting that front end to come through on that turn, we won't lock up so much on that front end at first, and it'll get a lot more fluid. And so don't worry about it if that's happening to you. Just keep doing them. Now, Shooter wouldn't have been a candidate, in my opinion, for only putting 9 or 10 rides on and then giving him a big break. There's a lot of horses that I would do that with. Shooter just wasn't one of them that I would have chosen to do that with, but it appears to be working out, doesn't it? He's riding right off like he, kind of remembers everything that we did before. And I'll have clients that bring me horses, especially mares that are going to be brood mares, and they'll say, just put 10 rides or so on them, get them really, really gentle. We want to make sure that this is something that we want to ride more of. We like how they move, and something that we can handle them if, in the pasture they get injured or something, or we need to help the baby nurse or get them in or whatever. We just need them gentle, and we want to make sure that there's something we want to ride more of. And so with those horses, we do the quote-unquote 30-day deal with them, and we put only about 10 rides, and, they go home and they become mamas. And those are the cases where we usually do 9 or 10, 11 rides. Another time that we only do 9 or 10 rides or so is if, say, they're a really small colt. And now you see right there, he got a little scooty with me, and all I had to do was bend him down into a smaller circle. We could have done that in the big arena. We could have done that riding out. If we have that softening in the face and in the neck and in the rib cage and hind end, we can soften them and slow them down. But if you don't have those really, really basic techniques and those tools at your disposal, you can't slow them down if they decide to grab their butt and scoot like that. So back to what I was saying about horses that I would put that 9 or 10 day start, 9 or 10 day ride on. if they're really tiny, if they're a little tiny 2-year-old and they need to learn work ethic and they need to learn about having a job, we'll do that really, really short curriculum with them, get the very, very basics on them. They ride in the round pen, they ride in the arena, and they ride out. And that's it. That's all they get. They might learn, if they come in the summertime, they learn about being rinsed off. They learn about fly spray, having their feet done. And they go home and they get to think about it, and they come right back first of spring. Or we go back to riding them in the fall. Similar to what I'm doing here with Shooter. And we let them go home and let them grow up a little bit. And, I get roasted in the comment sections for those kind of horses. Well, for 2-year-olds in general, I get roasted for. But, if you guys have been following for any period of time, you kind of see what the curriculum looks like, and you see how my horses turn out. And there has been quite a few little bitty guys that I've rode. And I'm kind of a little person, and I can get on those horses and get along with them just fine and not have any problems, and they go home a better individual emotionally and mentally. And when they're more physically ready to handle me and handle a bigger rider, we bring them back in and we ride them a little bit longer. But those would be the kind of horses that I would put this 10 ride start on. And like I said, Shooter wouldn't have been one of them, but here he is, and he's had 2 months off, and it looks like it worked out for the best, and it really does feel like it worked out for the best. He's riding around pretty darn good, and so far he's remembering. He's a little rusty, but he's remembering everything that we worked on before. So I kind of like to think of this first ride back as more of a tune-up, kind of getting back into the swing of things, getting acquainted with each other. And I'm going to finish off with walking him really quietly and on as long and loose of a rein as I can, still changing directions, getting him to follow the rein back and forth. I'm working on getting this head long and low, getting him in a quiet place, always leaving him in a better place than where I found him. And you'll see he gets quieter and quieter as we go, again on a long loose rein. I don't want to be having a death grip on my reins and constantly, holding on to his face. I want him to really feel really comfortable with what we're doing here. And again, where's he going to go, right? And we've just proven in the last 15 minutes that we have all of our tools still there. If we have to do an emergency stop, they're there. So a couple of nice soft figure eights. And one thing I am going to finish off with here is doing some turns on the forehand and making sure he still knows the turn on the forehand and moving his hip over and moving to leg pressure. That's going to be my last thing on the checklist to make sure. And I'm not going to open and close the gate this particular ride because if you didn't notice, a couple of times he wanted to slow down, get sulky by the gate. He wanted to go to the gate. He was like, okay, I'm done. It's time to get out of here. So I'm not going to finish the day working the gate. But if I were to finish the day working the gate, I'd always want to work on these turns on the forehand first before we go to work on that gate to make sure I have the hip control. But as you can see, compared to the last ride that we had on him, these turns on the forehand have gotten really good. He's really starting to kick that hind end over for me. I'm not having to kick really hard or push for a long period of time or really pull his head to the opposite side. He's giving his side pretty willingly, more so than he has in the past. So he's starting to understand what the game is. Right here, I put him in a backup. And we know Shooter's backup has never been really all that good. When I watch myself back on video, I kind of cringe a little bit, not gonna lie. I wish my release would have been faster. I wish I wouldn't have asked him so much. I wish I would have worked on softening him in the rib cage a little bit more. But hindsight's 20/20, as in most of these videos when we watch him back, we watch ourselves. But he didn't fight, he didn't toss his head up in the air, right? Like there was one video, I plan on making a short about it, if I haven't already, but he really throws his head up in the air hard when he kind of, can't find the place to get soft and back up. And so I like that he did kind of set his head on the vertical and did take a couple steps back, even though, you know, it wasn't like this perfect, you know, reining horse backup, so to speak. We get a beautiful turn on the forehand from left to right. That's what I'm looking for. I want the inside hind to step over and just really reach and move that whole body over. He's really soft right there, so I'm going to quit with that and walk him over to the middle here. I want to dismount somewhere on this side. I'm going to ask him for a stop and back up, and the stop is really crappy. I'll warn you guys now. Like, I ask for it, you see me, and he just kind of walks right through it. La, 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 I didn't hear you. And then I go right into a backup. And again, we get some resistance, but we get some steps backwards. This needs a lot of work, guys. We're going to go to work on this now when I get back on him this spring. So I go ahead and walk him off again. That would have been the place to stop, right? But the stop was so bad and the backup wasn't that great either. So let's go ahead and walk again. We don't need to bang on him or anything. Let's just go set him up and ask him for the stop again. And when he stops this time, you'll be able to see the difference and compare the two. And this is where I quit for the day. And this is where I'm going to stomp my feet in the stirrups and step off of him, say thank you for the ride. And I appreciate you guys watching. I appreciate you guys hanging out here. Stay tuned for ride number 11 on Bonnys Six Shooter. I hope you guys have a great rest of your day.